55% of the world's population still has no access to the internet. My guest today is on a mission to change that. He's connecting thousands of people to the web for the first time in Africa and in India for $3 a month. Using Wi-Fi, of course. Meet emerging markets entrepreneur and investor Jim Forster, right after this.
Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board, telecomcareers.com.
All right, everybody, we're back. Welcome back to Wi-Fi Now TV. My name is Claus Hetting, as usual, and I am your host for this show. And this is episode 20 of this series. Now, this is the first time we're covering emerging markets on the show, and we'll have a lot more coming up on that. Super important topic in coming months. We're going to get to our guest, Jim Forster, in just a moment. Before that, I want to give you an update on what we're doing with Wi-Fi Now, the conference series, of course, because we're taking Wi-Fi Now, the conference to Washington, D.C., this coming April 19th to 21st. It will be the most comprehensive update on all things Wi-Fi assembled in the U.S., certainly this year. And, of course, a great opportunity for you to network with all the great Wi-Fi folks across the industry. So check out our program at wifinowevents.com/USA. And also, if you have any questions about it, just drop me a line at klaus@wifinowevents.com. Don't forget, mark your calendars. Dates are April 19th to 21st, and the place is Washington, D.C. Now, I'm delighted to welcome my guest today. His name is Jim Forster, and he's doing some fantastic work on connecting the unconnected in Africa and India. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Klaus. I'm very pleased to be here.
Great stuff. Now, Jim, you've been investing in projects providing internet access to some of the most remote and some of the poorest communities in the world, in Africa and in India and so forth. Before we get into the details of the projects, we're going to talk about that, of course. Can you tell us a bit about your motivation for getting into that? Because it's a hard business to be in.
Yeah. Well, it came from, I was 20 years at Cisco Systems, and I was a distinguished engineer there. And, sort of saw the internet grow. I started in 1988, and we had a great time, and I was very proud and pleased to do all that. It was fantastic. But as that internet matured, it got to be a big company thing. And I got a little tired of that. But at the same time, I looked around. I helped with a project to bring an internet cyber cafe to the base camp of Mount Everest in 2003, I think it was. And that made me realize, wow, if we can get the internet there, we could get it anywhere technically. But okay, there must be challenges. So what are they? So I started looking at them, traveling and listening. And then in 2006, I went to India, my first trip to India. And since that first visit, I have felt that good quality, affordable, high-speed internet could be made available in these places. And now that's true. And in fact, so with AirJaldi in India and Mawingu in Kenya, if you're in rural India where we have service, you can get the same internet that you would get if you were in Delhi or Gurgaon or Bangalore, any of these places. So this is, if you're on an internet, this is obvious, but at the same time it's profound because you used to be people had to move to the cities to get opportunities. Now they can get some of the same opportunities in their hometowns. And I think this is a fantastic thing. So
absolutely. I do want to dig a little bit more into the details of it, because we're also talking about connecting communities that have no more to spend than a couple of dollars a month.
Correct. That's correct.
So obviously the business side of it is critical, but so is the technology. You've got to hit rock bottom prices as far as the infrastructure is concerned. How do you do that? Maybe
Wi-Fi was critical to that, and that was what I learned in this first visit. Is that the same chips that go into laptops and phones and desks and whatever, and home Wi-Fi routers, those are capable of being. They can be used to make infrastructure. They can, even a cheap home router with a good antenna could go 5 or 10 miles. And so that was the big breakthrough, was that the technology was low priced, was very powerful. But now, how do you make a network out of a box? Well, you need people, you need an architecture, you need a bit of financing. So there was a lot of work to do. But the key is keeping it low priced. And the technology has been there for a while, but it's a matter of assembling a team that is competent, but is not outsiders. Outsiders are well, sorry, but too expensive.
Right, and when we talked a few months back, we also discussed some of the challenges involved. And typically what most people will say about emerging markets is that, for example, that something like backhaul is very difficult to come by. And I remember you had some really good comments on that, especially with regards to fiber and so forth.
Sure. So, what most of the technologists in the US and the Europe, there's a lot of infrastructure. And so Wi-Fi to most people there means, hanging an access point, connected up to your Ethernet, and that's about it. Well, if you don't have infrastructure, then the backhaul is the problem. So whereas we are doing Wi-Fi, we are at the same time building infrastructure. We are building our own backhaul because the Wi-Fi chips are good enough and the software is good enough so that you put it in an outdoor box and you put it with antennas and you design a network. And it's very much, and it really is microwave style engineering. It's just using Wi-Fi class equipment, but with microwave class engineering. And then we make our own backhaul. We have, going 10 kilometers, no problem. 20 or even 40 kilometers is quite feasible, point to point and line of sight, but no problem.
And you're building this, you're actually setting up and constructing the equipment. So this is not off the shelf.
No. Well, we're building a network out of off the shelf boxes. And so in that sense, it's an engineering problem, and our components are routers and switches and antennas and solar panels. And but we are building an infrastructure, outdoor, long distance, hopefully long lived and fast.
Mm-hmm. So you can cover 10 miles perhaps with this kind of technology at rock bottom prices.
Yeah, and we're really doing two separate things. One is building the backhaul infrastructure, so that's backhaul, that's distribution, and then we are delivering a service to customers, and there's two separate services. We're delivering, so call it a fixed wireless service, and that we're delivering internet, broadband internet to a place, usually with a Cat5 as our DMARC, and then we're also delivering Wi-Fi as a hotspot service to certain places, and that's on a prepaid basis. So very similar to the way mobiles work in emerging markets. You don't have an account where you're paying in arrears monthly. You have an account that you top up periodically, and then while it's topped up, you get to use it, or until it's used up.
So Jim, why do you think not everybody's going this route? Is it too hard to do, or people just don't know about it?
I would say it's more that it's more the latter. They just don't know about it in the following sense. So in the US and Europe, we have this fixed infrastructure. We had copper loops, we had DSL, we had cable. Then mobiles came along and everyone said, oh, I love it. A mobile phone, great, I'll use it. And then the mobile phone people said, oh, you can have internet. And we said, great, I love that too. But so that was an add-on to the fixed infrastructure. By and large, India and Africa and lots of Central Asia had no fixed infrastructure, or they had maybe max 5% penetration. So there was a huge vacuum. Mobile operators filled that with a fantastic service. You can go anywhere, it works, you can even do internet on it, but that's all they know about. And so they don't, and mobile is now a mature service with an architecture that you can go to Barcelona, or you can read the 3GPP specs, and you can pretty well see what it's going to be in 5 years from now. And the mobile operators followed that playbook because that's the way they save costs, that's the way they drive commonality. But that doesn't include a fixed infrastructure that, well, it's easier, it's faster, it's cheaper. And so that the mobile just was so good, it filled up the space. Now we're effectively backfilling with another infrastructure that we think is faster and cheaper in some places.
So this consumer electronics, essentially infrastructure, obviously based on completely different economics, a different economic basis than all the mobile infrastructure that we're seeing. But you're still getting really good, respectable performance out of this, right? We're talking about 50 megabits
or better performance. And what we realized is that we can deliver the same internet content to the same devices, but simply faster and cheaper, because the path from the fiber, and that's the internet, and fiber prices are competitive and depends on the area and so forth, to the device. As an operator, our goal is to minimize the cost, maximize the speed from the fiber to the device. Wi-Fi as the endpoint is quite good for that, Microwave in between is quite good. Fiber is great, but we don't expect fiber to every village in India or to every home in India anytime soon. So we'll take the fiber as far as we can. We'll do high-speed microwave style backhaul and distribution. Then we'll either connect a customer directly to that, or we'll put on a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Right, and sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, this is not philanthropy as such, right? This is for you that you're investing in, you're getting returns from, right?
Absolutely. In that, and you know, to be candid, the returns have not gotten returns yet, and I'm not expecting them, next month or next year. But what I am very much structured, I believe that it cannot be structured as a philanthropy because it will never scale. We can't say, well, it's operating at a loss, but it's a good cause. That's good for a small pilot. It's not good for continent scale things. And my mission here, and others that are doing it, we believe that we can connect millions of people in India, tens of millions of people, to a good high-speed internet, and that's something I would love to do. And so,
right.
In order to do that, it has to be structured for profit. You have to have the value you're delivering a little greater than what it costs you. That margin then that's the commercial advantage that allows you to get additional financing, maybe debt financing, and you can grow.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the role of TV Whitespace in this, because I know you've been involved with Microsoft in some of these projects. They're obviously big proponents of the TV Whitespace. Can you tell us about that?
So TV Whitespace is a great technology. And Microsoft has pioneered it, and with the help of and Google as well, and they've done fantastic work on the policy side, and equipment vendors have made equipment. So it's a good complementary technology. It has RF propagation advantages in some cases. So we'd love to have it. It's still, with the exception of the UK and the US, I believe, still in the sort of pilot stage from the regulatory and licensing point of view. Consequently, the equipment volumes have not gone large, and consequently it's still a little bit more expensive than the Wi-Fi, but very useful, love to use it. Would like to see the licenses, get more straightforward.
Mm-hmm. I think we actually got a photograph of yourself at your project in Kenya, but it's with Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. He was obviously down there, very interested in this project. Yeah. Can you tell me something about what your involvement with Microsoft in this project has been and how it's supported?
So I came to this project through a friend of mine, Malcolm Brew, who has been heavily involved in networking communications in East Africa for years. He's spent most of his life in East Africa. In fact, he's Scottish, but he and his brother made the first ISP in Uganda called Bushnet. And then he was doing work at the university in Scotland and on TV Whitespaces, and what became principal investigator for Microsoft-sponsored TV Whitespace pilot program. And so that went along, and then he contacted me. I came over for a visit, and he was looking how to scale it and all. So I thought it was quite interesting, and so I put a little bit of money in as a seed investment, and that got them off the ground. And then subsequently, Microsoft and Vulcan Inc. came in as equity investors along with me, and so we're off and running now. So they have Mawingu and Malcolm have a long relationship with Microsoft. Out of that, there were various visits, and out of that, Satya Nadella came because he sees these unconnected people, the young people, and he saw the impact that it had at schools, and he really, really thinks this is Microsoft's and the world's future. So he came to a rural village in Kenya to launch Windows 10, and his speech and all, and he did a nice video conference to a school in India, all over our network. And that made me really proud to see that. And I love the fact that he's out there, he sees the impact and he sees the future, and it's connecting people in schools, individuals.
Yeah, great leadership from all of you, I'd say. And so how big is your network now in Kenya? How many subscribers have you got on there? You want to share a little bit of that?
Yeah, so Mawingu has really just started, even though it's been a pilot program for a long time in terms of deployments. They really hit the road and started going in end of July after Satya's visit. And so they got 100 hotspots up and backhaul and so forth by October. And they're now, I think coming close to 200. Plus we're starting to connect SME customers, small, medium enterprise customers with direct connections and a little different billing plan. So we have now about 100 of those as well. So, but this is really only a start. So our next target is 400, and then 1,000 hotspots, then 4,000. We're focused in a geographic area, but we want to cover the whole country.
And so how do the canyons in these areas typically connect to your network? Are they using the computers or smartphones? Or?
Smartphones. This hotspot business is very much smartphones. The internet broadband to a place, different sort of business. We do that as well. In that case, it's in schools, institutions, businesses. There, it's computers inside the building. But for the consumer service, it's smartphones. Smartphones are really, really happening. It's the younger people have them. It's an aspirational purchase. They will have a smartphone, even if they don't have internet service at home, even if there's no signal at home, because it's a cool device. It takes pictures, it's music, and okay, the internet works in some places. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're working on these projects, Jim, what would you say is the biggest sort of practical challenge in getting things done in these areas?
The biggest problem to get started is licensing, and many countries feel that it is important to control the businesses, and they have licenses and terms and regulations and conditions. That's the biggest problem. For instance, in India, we've had to put up a substantial bank guarantee in order to be a licensed ISP operator. And in many countries as well, if you misbehave, you don't have all the licenses right, that's fine for a small scale. So if you're a mom and pop operation in a village, not a problem. But if you want to be national scale, the bigger guys, the mobile network operators, at some point they will say, do they have all their licenses in shape? And if you don't, you'll be stopped. So licenses, taxes, business registrations, all of that. Technology is not a problem. The technology is quite good. Okay, I'd love to see more, and more will come, I'm confident. But so the license is a problem. Technology is not a problem. People is somewhat of a problem. Just like any growing business, there's always management challenges, personnel challenges. But what AirJaldi has done, and Mawingu is starting to do as well, is very important for this sort of operation, is to have a training program to train installers, customer service people, all of that. And these don't have to be university people. And frankly, we do quite well with smart young people who have not been in the university, and they go through a training program, and it's starting with basics. We've taken people in India and AirJaldi had no computer experience, zero, and they're turned into excellent employees delivering great service. And one or two of them are now managing a whole network. That means they have customer responsibility, they have technical responsibility, they have hiring responsibility. These are people who never went to university, never used a computer before they came to us. So what this is really powerful, because the technology has always been cheap, but the deployment costs were high, and truck rolls and backhaul. Well, if your workforce comes from the same population as your customers, the costs are matched.
So this is fascinating, because while you're doing all this work on the ground using cheap equipment, essentially, and Wi-Fi and TV white space and so forth, there are other folks working on putting up balloons and drones and satellites and so forth, space age stuff, which is supposed to connect the next billion people, which is really about what this program is about. So what would your comment to that kind of thing be?
Well, I wish them well. Some of it is fantastically cool technology. I mean, I've been looking at some of the Facebook's announcements of their drone. Oh, it's amazing technology, and I think it certainly could be useful. I think that so I would view it this way: I would view it as, maybe another backhaul. So great. If I can get a good, broadband signal from, I don't care where it comes from. What I care about is, what does it cost? And I know what I can get, what I pay for fiber in India, and India has fiber within 50 kilometers of most of its population. So we're in good shape in India. Some places would be different. If it's very mountainous and if there's no roads, then I'd be looking for a drone or a balloon or something like that. Might be able to deliver good internet at a good speed. However, it would then still need, I believe, the sort of a ground game. And because I don't believe it's going to be suitable to beam down to every handheld phone, I think that there's still a good case to be made for a hybrid network where there's Wi-Fi at the end. And I also believe you need local people who understand the network. Otherwise, you run into the problem that maybe some of us had with our grandparents or even parents or something, which is, Jim, my internet's not working. Well, it turns into be some little Windows problem or some little computer problem, you need people who understand a bit about the network. And so if these other technologies come in, that's great. I think that the ground force that we're building, the workforce that we're building, would still be useful and would in fact would welcome that technology. But I don't think you can do it without the ground force.
Right, boots on the ground, as they say.
Yeah.
So no, absolutely, and it's fantastic you're doing all this work, and we want to get it out there so that people understand that it's doable, which is one of the missions I have, at least with this episode of the series. Right, I want to talk a little bit about India with you, because the network out there is called AirJaldi, I think.
AirJaldi, yeah.
Right. And
just by the way, AirJaldi, it's a hybrid word. It's English and Hindi, and you see a lot of that in India. So obviously, air, that's an English word. Jaldi is a Hindi word that means hurry up, fast. Fast.
Right, okay. Cool. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you specifically also because you've got a partnership going with Facebook in India, and I just found out about this, I think 2 days ago. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Chris Daniels, their vice president of Internet.org activities, contacted me now, a year and a quarter ago, 15 months ago, something like that. And we'd had some earlier preliminary discussions, but so he contacted me and we discussed and what could be done. And so we agreed upon a project and have been through a couple phases of that and are continuing to work with them. And at first I think what they wanted to do was to learn, what would be the uptake? If they put in a good fast Wi-Fi hotspot in villages where there was either no 3G or very poor or expensive, would there be uptake? And so we agreed upon a project, and we found that there was very good uptake. We were surprised ourselves, and it went through phases. First, it was free, and everyone loves free stuff. And it was amazing, the connectivity. People were connecting with no advertising. They found the signal on their phone, and they tried it, and they got connected, and they used it. So now it's moved to a phase where they're paying for it, and it's a good price. It's a very good price, in fact. And what we've established is that people will use it, and there's not huge barriers of adoption or anything like that.
And actually, I also want to bring up this next picture that you kindly allowed me to show, because it so happens, and I also just found this out the other day, to my delight, actually, that you are providing internet services to the Tibetan government in exile in Dharamsala, including His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And on that picture, you can see His Holiness together with yourselves and I guess the rest of the team.
Yeah, we were very honored for that. They came out because, we have been delivering internet service to his office for several years now, and we're pleased to do that. And he's been increasingly doing video conferencing, same as this. But he likes to travel. He really does want to connect with people. But, he's getting a bit old, and he really shouldn't be traveling as much. So this has been under discussion for a while. So last year, Bishop Desmond Tutu came to Dharamsala to meet with him, and they webcast it. Well, we supplied that as we supplied the bandwidth for that. And so our guys know their guys pretty well. And that after a little while, they said, well, would you like to come by for an audience with His Holiness? And we, of course, said yes. And so that's how that came about. And so he said he was very thankful for the work we're doing. And we really appreciate that.
Well, that's great. Did he have any comments on, how it has affected his community? Obviously, he understands that clearly.
He did not have comments. We didn't have time as it worked out in that thing. Right. But it turns out, just as it affects him, we understand, he gets the news from the BBC. He only trusts the BBC, and he reads it on an iPad. So,
okay, very good.
Yeah, but he's not technology adverse. He's, happy to use it. So
yeah, right. All right, Jim. So great stories, by the way. We could just carry on here. What I do want to ask you about is that if you were to advise investors, organizations, communities, whomever, who want to get into this space, which has been traditionally difficult, right? What would you advise them to do?
I would say that, first of all, you have to be patient. Second of all, you have to do a lot of listening and learning, because things are different in these parts of the world. The economics are different. There's cultural differences. And so don't take a solution that that works really well here and expect it to work somewhere else automatically. So, And along with that is the costs have to be low. So the cream, we've done skimming the cream in Bangalore and Delhi. There's plenty of people who can pay US prices. If you want to get, and they're covered. If you want to get past them, you have to get lower prices.
And how do you see this developing over the next 5 years? What would you like to see happen?
I'd like to see millions of AirJaldi customers and millions of Mawingu customers getting good service and the changes that will make to their lives. So I'd like to see these companies grow, deliver good service to millions of people, and do that through the workforce built up of local people.
Well, Jim, it's fantastic to have you on the show, and couldn't be more delighted to have you here as, I think, a representative leader of what should happen everywhere anyway, in my opinion. So
thank you.
Great to have you. I thank you, and you have a standing invitation to come back anytime you want and tell us more about the
look for look for an opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim.
Good. Thanks, Claus.
All right.
Bye.
All right, everybody, that's my guest for today, Jim Forster, and fantastic that I finally managed to catch up with him, because he is a busy man traveling all over the place, as you would also conclude from that interview. Now, what's left for me to say is that on next week's show, we've got Mike Leibowitz of Extreme Networks here. There's something completely different, of course. Extreme Networks, famous for being the official Wi-Fi provider of the National Football League in the United States. We'll ask him how to get high-density Wi-Fi and fan engagement right at stadiums. Lots of great technology there coming up. And that's it for this show. Enjoy and keep watching this channel, and see you next week.
Wi-Fi Now is a production of RCR TV News. To suggest a show topic or to learn more about Wi-Fi Now events, you can reach Claus Hetting at klaus@hettingconsulting.com. To find out more about Wi-Fi Now and all things wireless, visit rcrwireless.com.